Hi, I'm Robert Osborne, and welcome to another edition of our monthly guest programmer series, where we invite a distinguished guest to come and select a few films from our TCM library that they particularly like, and join me then to tell us why they picked it. And this month, we've invited the man known as today's master of horror to pick our lineup of films. He's a filmmaker responsible for some of the best and best-liked horror and sci-fi thrillers, including Halloween and The Fog. He's John Carpenter, and welcome, John. Thanks so much for being here.
I'm delighted to be here with you.
Good, thanks. Well, John's first selection is the 1951 classic, The Thing from Another World, which is indeed an interesting choice, I think, since John made his own version of this film in 1982. Why did you pick this film?
I love this movie because of the fact that when I first saw it, I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I didn't see it in its first release. I saw it in its re-release because I was too young. Mm-hmm. It scared me.
It
really scared me. And then I saw it later in film school. I began to appreciate some of the Hawksian element that I could see in it. The overlapping dialogue, the characters dealing with each other, the exchange of cigarettes and props. And I realized the kind of influence that Howard Hawks had over The Thing. In addition to just being a science fiction film, it is another expression of his kind of group adventure idea that he's done in so many films.
Now, it's always credited that Howard Hawks produced the film and Christopher Nyby directed it. But everybody else has said, no, Hawks maybe directed the film. What is your investigation into that?
When I saw the movie in film school, I saw the Hawks' influence. So I did a little bit of research. Some of the actors claim that Hawks was directing them, was rehearsing them for the sequences. It certainly appears that way. But I do know that Christian Nyby was Hawks' editor on Red River, and he owed him a favor because Nyby recut Red River while Hawks was gone. So The Thing was his reward.
Well, and isn't it kind of true that back in the time, 1951, when The Thing was made, that it wasn't too respectable for somebody of like Howard Hawks' stature to be making a horror film?
It's true. You know, The Thing was a very early pioneer of this kind of flying saucer monster from Mars movie. It took hold in the 50s and became a big baby boomer favorite. But back then, of course, it was a little déclassé to do that. You know, Hawks was famous for Red River and comedies and really classic films. But he did exert his influence over the movie, and you can see it when you watch the film.
So let's see the film. You've set it up very well. Here it is from 1951, produced by Howard Hawks, direction credited to Christian Nyby, chosen by our guest programmer, director John Carpenter. Here's The Thing from Another World. Terrific film. And I'm back with the man who chose it for us, this month's guest programmer, writer, director, and composer John Carpenter. That is incredible. I never get over that scene where the door opens and the thing comes out. That is such a great shocker.
And in goes the gasoline.
Yeah.
He goes up in flames.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Now, you remade this in 1982.
I did.
Now, first off, where'd you get the nerve to do that? And then why did you do that?
Well, this was an assignment. This was my first studio feature.
Okay.
It was offered to me.
Right.
And I thought, I can't turn this down. But I was not anxious to remake this movie because of my love for it. And I realized, I don't know how I can make this better, really. I can modernize it, but how do I make this better? So my idea was to make it as true to our time in the 80s as Hawks was to his time in the 50s.
What was the biggest challenge for you in that?
The Thing had a lot of challenges. The locations, the design of the creature, just braving the elements and shooting on location was really grueling. But it turned out, I was delighted with it.
Well, we've talked earlier, and you had said that of all your films, it's kind of your favorite that you've done.
It is. It was not received well. It was hated by the critics. It was not a big hit. But over the years, it's gained a little cachet.
Right.
And I still maintain it's as far as I go as a director, it's one of my better films.
Yeah. And Howard Hawks is a particular favorite of yours as a director. Why?
Howard Hawks is my favorite director for a number of different reasons. And this came during my time at film school. I began to study him. And I began to study the way he makes movies, his narrative style, his invisible camera work, essentially, for the most part, not calling attention to itself like a lot of other directors, but its dealings with characters and their interactions, the way they exchanged props with each other, the man and woman relationship, the split between his adventure films and his comedies. I thought, this is a master in charge of his cinematic vision. And he worked within the Hollywood system, which I admired enormously. So he wasn't somebody that struck out on his own as an independent. He worked with big movie stars, with John Wayne and Cary Grant, and I just love his films.
He could do anything.
Unbelievable.
You know. Well, let's move on. Don't go away. John and I are going to be back to talk about the next film he's chosen as our guest programmer. It's a sci-fi film less known than The Thing, and it has Marshall Thompson on a mission to Mars. Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. I'm back with this month's guest programmer, filmmaker whose credits include Halloween, Big Trouble in Little China, and Starman. Welcome back, John Carpenter.
Again, nice to be here.
Good to have you here. Now, John's next movie pick is a film from 1958, released by United Artists, entitled It, The Terror from Beyond Space. And John's here to tell me why he chose it. Now, this is a new one for me. So, how did this grab the attention of John Carpenter?
Well, John Carpenter was all of 10 years old when he first saw this.
Yes.
And I was a baby boomer from the baby boomer generation, and also a science fiction monster movie fan.
Yes.
I love those movies.
Yeah.
And It, the Terror from Beyond Space is a little gem in a lot of really bad films that were made at that time. And it was made for very little money, shot in about 6 days, with a pretty good cast. It has its flaws, but it also has a bit of suspense. It has a bit of kind of this claustrophobic feel of this creature loose in a spaceship. It influenced Alien.
It sounds a little like Alien.
Alien has a lot of precedents, but this being one of them. The original writer told me that his inspiration was It, the Terror from Beyond Space.
Yeah.
It was great because these movies came out in double bills. And as a kid, I just couldn't get enough of them. So a lot of baby boomers like myself recognized how much fun this movie was. Now, it has enormous flaws. It has logic flaws. They use grenades and bazookas and guns inside a spaceship trying to kill.
Not a wise idea. No.
Everybody smokes.
Another bad idea.
The scientists, the women scientists, all make coffee and deliver food, much like the kind of mores of the time. There's a really one kind of stiff performance in it. But Marshall Thompson was a great soldier in these kind of films. He made a bunch of these, and he brought a certain credibility to it all.
Good actor.
Very good actor, and he plays a man who's accused of murder, but actually he didn't do it. It's it.
Anne Duran, I notice, is in the cast list. Terrifically dependable character actress.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
and Dabs
good
Greer
people.
is in it.
Dabs
It's
Greer.
just, the cast is really excellent. And for a little means, by that I mean very low budget, Edward L. Kahn did a really pretty good job of directing this movie.
Well, they did a lot of work, I guess, in 6 days, right? That's not easy.
That's pretty incredible.
Yes.
He started with our gang comedies, and he's done all sorts of work, and ended up doing a lot of science fiction and horror in the 50s.
Well, you've whetted my appetite. Let's have a look here. From 1958, directed by Edward L. Kahn and starring Marshall Thompson. Selected by this month's guest programmer, John Carpenter. Here is It, the Terror from Beyond Space. Hey, good lesson in there. Don't pick up hitchhikers, at least not when traveling to or from Mars. I'm here with the man who selected it for us, writer and director John Carpenter, who is our guest programmer this month. That's a very nifty little film. Made in only 6 days. That is amazing. And very similar to Alien.
It is.
Yeah.
But it's very much of its time. Again, the attitudes towards the military and towards command in that film.
Yeah, they're all different.
Very different than today. The male and female roles were different. But it's still got something. It's got a great little engine that drives suspense. I'm happy about it.
When did you first know that you wanted to be a filmmaker?
In 1956, after I saw Forbidden Planet.
Yeah, another sci-fi.
Another sci-fi film that I've watched right here on Turner Classic Movies.
And a great one.
I thought, I want to do that. I really want to do that.
Mm-hmm. What was your first step in accomplishing that?
Before then, I made little 8mm movies with my father's home movie camera. Went to film school, learned the craft, learned the techniques, and then struck out on my own.
So what's the hardest part of being a filmmaker?
Shoes and sitting down. Your feet hurt, and you have to sit down as much as possible because it's just grueling work. And it's tough. It's tough to have a life if you make a lot of movies, if you work all the time. It's tough.
So how do you think today's films compare to some of the classic films of the past?
It's interesting. I think we people love movies that we saw when we were young. They really are powerful to us. I know that my formative years really were the 50s. However, having said that, I've seen movies today that are just brilliant, brilliantly done with new techniques. There's some really great directors coming along. So I think movies will always flourish. Movies will always grow. They are always a product of their time. But they'll always be with us. They're the greatest.
Yeah. And don't go away and don't look behind you either. We have another Fright film coming up, selected by John Carpenter as this month's guest programmer. This one's a classic story by Mary Shelley, as told by the folks at England's Hammer Studios back in 1957. Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. I'm back with our guest programmer for this month, the man responsible for all sorts of lively tales guaranteed to both entertain and also keep you awake at night. I want to say welcome back to writer and director John Carpenter. Thanks so much for being here, John.
I'm loving this.
Well, I'm having a good time, too. Now, the next film John has selected from the TCM vault is a Fright film from the Hammer Studios in 1957 called The Curse of Frankenstein. Why this film?
This movie truly affected me when I was a kid. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. First of all, it was in color.
Right.
It was British with terrific performances in it. And it pushed the boundaries for its time for what you could see on the screen. I was
in the way of violence and that sort of thing?
Violence and blood, but yet just the visceral feel of Frankenstein. You know, I was used to the old classic Frankenstein films from Universal.
Same story here.
Boris Karloff was unbelievable as the Frankenstein monster. But this teaming of Peter Cushing and Christopher Lee, the kind of revolutionary new makeup that Christopher Lee wore, really was stunning for me at the time. And it's very British, and it's directed by a man later, when I got a little older and got a little more sophisticated about movie techniques, Terence Fisher, who I've become to admire a great deal. Again, this is not a movie with a huge budget. This is a movie shot very efficiently in a very short time. But the amount of fear and suspense they got on the screen was incredible.
Now, this was, I believe, the first of the Frankenstein films done in color.
There had been some done back in the 30s, Mystery in the Wax Museum I can think of. But yes, this was unique in the
Certainly
sense...
at that time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what made it so stunning, is to see it in color. I was on a double bill with another Hammer film, X the Unknown, another really terrific Hammer film. They were branching away from their science fiction films, the Quatermass Experiment, X the Unknown. They were branching a little bit into horror. They got the rights to Frankenstein, but they couldn't use the makeup.
Right.
So they had
I think they made a deal, didn't they, with Universal, that they got the rights to all the Universal monsters?
Frankenstein, Dracula, the Mummy.
Right.
Absolutely.
And they redid their own
and
versions.
remade them, and they're all uniquely entertaining and fascinating. But the two stars are really the reason this movie holds up, especially Peter Cushing.
Yeah.
He's amazing.
Well, all those great British actors that they had in even small parts.
Plus, there was a little bit of, you know, the British always add a little sexual, and the maid actually has her eyes on Baron Frankenstein. I even caught that as a kid. I thought, what's going on here?
Not much gets by a 9-year-old in Kentucky, right?
That's right.
Okay, well, let's have a look. Here's the film with Christopher Lee as the monster, and what was his first appearance in a Hammer horror film, actually. Movie from 1957, chosen by this month's guest programmer, John Carpenter. Here's The Curse of Frankenstein. Interesting film. And that was Christopher Lee's only time playing the Frankenstein monster, but that led to his being cast by the Hammer Studios quite often as Frankie's old pal, Count Dracula. And I'm here right now with the man who selected that movie for us, this month's guest programmer, director John Carpenter. Do you have a favorite scene in the movie?
I think probably when we first see the monster for the very first time, he rips off the bandages. I love the kind of reimagining of Frankenstein turning on all these levers to get the whole thing going. And the Frankenstein monster in a kind of aquarium bubbling to the top. That whole idea was just beautifully, beautifully done.
Now, about the music in this.
James Bernard, I got to meet James, and he's done a lot of really, really famous Hammer scores. And one that probably stands out the most is the score for Horror of Dracula. And he's told me some of his techniques. He's a really, really nice and wonderful man. But his music, really chilling stuff for its time. And even now, I have a collection of his stuff at my house.
It never really gets a lot of credit, though.
It does not. And a lot of strings, percussion. But he told me one of his secrets was to sing the title of the movies. I mean, Dracula. He would actually sing him out, Hound of the Baskervilles. He would sing it out, and that would be his theme.
Interesting. Well, let's move on. Don't go away. John's going to be back to introduce his next film selection as this month's guest programmer. This time, though, it's not a horror film, but instead a classic Western, and starring the best friend the Old West ever had, at least in the movies, John Wayne. Hi, I'm Robert Osborne. Joining me once again is this month's guest programmer, man known as today's master of horror, filmmaker John Carpenter. Welcome back, John.
Glad to be here.
Nice to have you here. Now, so far tonight, we've been on a roll with John, bringing us some of his favorite fright films, but the next pick is, surprise, something entirely different. It's a Western. It was directed by Howard Hawks back in 1959. Stars John Wayne, Dean Martin, Angie Dickinson, and Ricky Nelson. It's Rio Bravo. Now, when I saw this on your list, I was really surprised. All these horror films, and all of a sudden, a Western. And then earlier you said that was kind of your original intent, was to do Westerns, but they weren't in favor, so you kind of got in this other line. But why, of all the Westerns, did you pick this one?
Well, I have to go back again to a 10-year-old kid going to the movies on Saturday afternoon in downtown Bowling Green, and there was Rio Bravo. And I will never forget the effect of seeing that film. And I went again. They held over Rio Bravo in my small town for another week, and I went back again. And then later, of course, in film school, again, I revisited this, knowing more about Howard Hawks. And I love this Western. I love it. I love everything.
Well, why do you think
it.
as a kid this one particularly grabbed you so much?
It's a really good question. I think because part of Hawks's drive as a creator was groups of people who have to survive under pressure. And literally, this was the sheriff, John Wayne, his drunken deputy, Dean Martin, Walter Brennan, unbelievable character actor, really funny. Again, the jailer. And they had to survive inside this jail against forces of evil outside. It's something that appealed a great deal to me, not just in Westerns, but that general plot. I've remade that 100 times myself as a horror film. So,
This plot?
This plot.
Really?
Oh, yeah. People trapped someplace, and outside is the forces of evil are going to come and get them. But there was the measure of what a professional is and does in this film. That was what Howard Hawks was about a lot. Are you good enough, John Wayne says to Dean Martin at one point. Are you good enough to do the job? Are you competent enough? Are you up to it? Or have you let the demons that bother you drag you down? Plus, it has this incredible score by Dmitri Tiomkin, who invented the Degüello. Now, the Degüello is a song played at the Alamo. But the Degüello, in reality, is very different than what they gave us in the movie. That was all created by Tiomkin. And Wayne loved it so much, he used it again in the Alamo. So the same beautiful tune. And the movie just turns into fun at the end when they're shooting at the bad guys. Walter Brennan is irresistible. And who can't love Ricky Nelson as a gunfighter? I mean, it's just amazing.
And Angie Dickinson.
Oh, yes. And Hawks reprieved a lot of the scenes he did in To Have and Have Not.
Right.
in Rio Bravo. The hotel corridor scenes and the banter between Wayne and Dickinson.
Right.
Just brilliant.
And didn't he remake it altogether?
He
with John
remade
Wayne
it
again?
He did it 3 times. He
Yes.
made the same film 3 times.
The others were
There was Rio Bravo, El Dorado,
El Dorado, yes.
and Rio Lobo was the third.
Yes. So he liked it too.
He did.
Well, you set that up very well. It is a terrific movie. Here it is with a cast that does include also Ward Bond, chosen for us by this month's guest programmer, writer and director John Carpenter. Here's Rio Bravo. Wonderful film. And I'm here with the man who selected it for us as this month's guest programmer, writer and director John Carpenter. John's been with me all evening discussing some of his favorite films. This is such a good movie. It really is. It rolls right along and so entertaining.
It's so much fun, too.
Yeah, and the casting is great. Now, how important to you is casting, do you think, in a film?
It's huge, and it's essential because these are the people who are going to portray the characters. So
Yeah.
you have to be very careful and very lucky when you cast.
Yeah. Did you ever meet Howard Hawks?
I did.
Did
I
he come to USC when you were there?
Hawks came to USC and spoke to us, and I met him afterwards. He was a very intimidating character. He could make you feel like you weren't worthy of speaking to him.
Yes.
So I was really scared. So I kind of came up timidly, Mr. Hawks, I'm a big fan. I asked him about The Thing, and he talked a little bit about Christian Nyby, but he was a storyteller, and he kept a lot of his secrets hidden. What he told you were things that he made up that he wanted you to think.
I see.
So you couldn't...
Recreating his history.
That's correct. And he really sort of made it up at one point and would tell the same stories over and over again. But you had to look a little closer in his films, really to find out the truth of what was going on. And I did.
You pointed out something I hadn't really thought about until you pointed out how many of his films are about camaraderie between men in groups like Only Angels Have Wings and Gungadine and all those movies. That's kind of a basic themes.
A love story between men.
Yeah.
And then the woman who's trying to get into the group.
Right.
And how does she deal with getting in
Right.
or out? If you look at Only Angels Have Wings, and then you go to Hatari,
Right.
and a giant years separation, you can see essentially these are themes that he's dealing with over and over again in his adventure movies. In his comedies, he's really dealing with the breakdown between men and women of civilization. So he humiliates his leading man, especially Cary Grant. He dresses him in nightgowns and puts him in terrible situations.
That was the Mail Ward Bride. Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
And
Bring Up Baby you're talking
absolutely.
about. Yeah.
And so it's two sides of modern life, essentially. I think that's why I love Hawks so much. He's a modern director.
Well, we're proud of having you here as a guest programmer. Thanks so much, John.
Well, thank you. It's delightful to be here.
Thanks. Well, you've been a good one. And come back anytime.
I'm ready.
You're more than welcome.
Okay.
Well, we're going to say goodbye to John right now, but you know how it is on TCM. There's always a movie. And shown as a movie should always be seen, uncut and commercial free. The only way to see a film. So stick around. We have another one on its way.